Thanks to our animals friends, we now know how to set up. Let's look how to play. On your turn, you will roll all 6 of your dice if they are not already stationed on the board. You can use any die to move around the ship one space. So here I can move into this adjacent room. Then I can put my food dice into this machine. However, I need 2 food dice to pop into the next slot, and I must fill it all at once. I've just cheated and taken one too many rerolls to do so, but you get the idea. Once I decide to produce, I roll the dice in the machine again, and any with circles create waste. I then move the crate over to the cargo bay. Speaking of the cargo bay, to drop off goods, we need to place a plane die here, and then we can drop off to the city we are at. This will always be 4 goods, so I'd need 3 electricity and 1 food. The waste bay I can fill up 1 at a time with any dice that has to be, as long as it's different to previous dice. If I get all the way to the top, I can remove 4 waste. Every time I run out of time, I take off a disc and put a new city out. If I complete a city, I get a new disc which represents a turn of the timer. That's it. Pandemic Rapid Response is a real-time dice game from designer Kane Klenko, who has a history with Fuse and Flatline of these real-time dice games. In it you play the crew of an aeroplane that can magically produce all sorts of resources that then need to be dropped into countries that are experiencing difficulties. So, for example, if you're in this water room, you need to place dice here to produce water. In the medical room, you need to produce it here. In the this is medical, this is syringes, this is power, and this is food. Your plane can produce all these things and then drop off. To do so, you have to be in a room. To get round the rooms, you just discard 1 of your dice, whatever, and you can move to an adjacent room. After you have produced in a room, you need to roll all the dice from that, which may or may not produce waste. And once you've got the crates that you need, they go to the back of your plane, and someone needs to go to the cargo bay to open the door. It can't be done by the pilot at the front because although machines exist which can magically produce these supplies, a button that could be elsewhere in the plane and release the cargo clearly doesn't exist. The game plays out in a turn-based style, so once the timer started, I'll have my turn. I get up to 3 rerolls. Oh, I've got some food things, I've got 2 things that can move the plane either way because I need to be around to Paris, so let's spend those to move the plane nearer to Paris. Those 2 dice are spent. Everything else, I'm blue, I'm in here. Paris needs 1 of everything: food, electricity, water, and plasters. Well, I've got 1 plaster, so let's move into the plaster room and pop that one there. I use that to move, so I'm going to roll again. I didn't get any more plasters. My last re-roll, got 1 more plaster, I can pop that in. End of my go. Now, the rooms need to have a certain amount of dice in them to produce these things. The bandage room needs 3 dice, but you can place 1 dice at a time in the bandage room. In the water room, you must place 2 at the same time before you can move to the next section. So I couldn't place 1 water die in here ready for the next person. But in the plaster room, I can end my go. The next person, who is grey, would need to move across by spending dice, and then they could stick a plaster in. Boom, we've got 3. We choose to activate that room, that goes to the cargo bay, and then these dice are not returned immediately, they're rolled, and any dice with circles on, which 2 of which I've rolled, add waste to the plane. If the waste fills up, you lose. So then those go back to the people who use them. If they go back to you on your turn, you can't re-roll them. The other thing you can do on the plane, apart from creating these stuff, is to get rid of waste. You go into the waste room, again you have to be there, and you can put 1 die at a time, and it lets you remove 1, 2 or 4 dice depending on if you have 3, 4 or 5 dice in there. Every time you complete a successful drop, you get another disc to the time disc zone. These indicate how many turns of the timer you're going to get, and every time the timer has to be returned, a new city will come out. In its easiest mode, you only have to deliver to 5 cities. Let me start my thoughts by saying that I was quite excited for this game because I am not a big fan of the pandemic system. I don't like the way things are reshuffled against you. I feel I like to know what's coming in a different way. The way the deck works, I think it's clever, but I don't like it. It's too harsh for me or whatever. So when I heard a real-time dice game was coming from Kane Klenko, nonetheless, I love Fuse, I like Flatline, I was excited. But this game loses it for me in a number of places. And that, firstly, is theme. I find it strange that a game that's set almost in more real-worldly situation, disease and riots or whatever, where you're going to aid them in a plane that's designed to aid them, has less theme coming off the board to me than Fuse did, which was just a deck of cards and some dice claiming to be bombs. And I think some of that comes down to the complete lack of tension I feel when I'm playing Pandemic Rapid Response. Part of that might be because it's too easy. Part of that might be because it's a timer, not an app. The app in Fuse certainly adds a lot of tension, a lot of stress. But Pandemic Rapid Response doesn't stress me out at all. And I think a big part of that is that essentially 5 of the stations are the same thing but different colours. There's not enough variety. Yes, you have to put different amounts of dice in them, which makes them harder or easier to complete. But when you've got a dice that has 6 different things on each side, then it just kind of makes a whole boring chance, really luck-driven thing of that. Whereas in Fuse, you could put a number on, you could put colour on, you have to follow certain patterns, you could work out the risk. Here it's all the same. Oh, we need 3 electricity, and that's the one we're nearest to. You can only fit 9 parcels in the cargo bay anyway before you have to discard them. So the best you can do is plan for 2 at a time, 2 drops at a time, because all the drops have 4 things you need to drop. Oh, this needs 3 yellows and 1 green, and that's what we ended up calling them because it's easier when you're playing against the clock. We may as well all head and do the yellows if I go in, bang, I fail to do yellows. Well, that's scuppered. The next person needs to go and do that because we're already round here. There's no point turning the plane back round and going around there. That's a waste of time. So the next person now needs to head in here. They need 3 yellows. And what you need to do is obvious, and because you're all taking turns, everyone on your go is just kind of going, yeah, do that. There's not an alpha player, you're all alpha players, because what you need to do is obvious. There might be a situation where, there could be some wisdom in going and emptying the cargo, the trash, the waste, or waiting in the cargo bay. But again, say we said we've got ourselves spaced out, we just need this 3 electricity, there's someone in the cargo bay ready, there's someone in the waste ready, roll. I didn't get the yellows I needed. Now these players either have to waste their turns, because we're already there, no point moving, so they just have to waste their turns or elect not to take them, or come across here, waste 2 dice, then they've got to try and get 3 in at once, and it just loses all sense of what made Fuse and Flatline such enjoyable experiences. And I'd even want to try all rolling at the same time and doing everything at the same time, but then this is clearly being balanced for one person going at a time with the timers. Maybe you take 1 or 2 discs off if you're all doing it at the same time, but then I'm getting into the stage where I feel like I'm doing the design job. And that's not what I want to do when I sit down to play a game. I don't want to have to do the further development. And unfortunately for me, that's what Rapid Response feels like it needed. A bit more immersion, a bit more further development. Why can't we have, rather than having to, get rid of waste and all that, how does this plane stay in the air? Why can't we have to stop and refuel, and that's how we have to turn the timer over, not just because we got to somewhere. That we get bonus time because we're refueling. Maybe we're refueling in the cities we land in, but we're dropping them out of the cargo bay, so obviously we're not, we're just flying over. why couldn't there be different ways of getting these? Like, or you just have one machine that produces and you queue your dice up, and what you have to queue them up in a clever order, and then that dictates the order the cubes come out in. This is just 5 stations that are essentially the same, and I don't want to have 5 stations that are essentially the same. I want a bit of theme, I want a bit of excitement. I want to feel that when this timer runs out or is getting near the end, I'm stressed and there's still a chance that I could make it. I want to make some decisions. Added to that, the fact that the player powers there is just clearly some player powers that are better than others. You can re-roll your dice up to 2 additional times. Excellent. One lets you store one of your dice for other people. Brilliant. And then some let you can turn a dice to any side. Some let you move twice with using 1 dice. Well, moving's not that big of a problem. The most I'm going to have to move is 4. When I've got 4 people, someone else is going to do that anyway. You can move the plane twice when you get a plane thing. Whoopie-doo. I'll roll in plane things all the time when I don't need them. Moving the plane has never been a problem. So there's a real bland powers compared with some really overpowered powers. And yeah, you can make the game harder with some crisis cards. Again, it's not adding the type of interaction that I want. It's just adding more deliveries that you have to do, or more hoops that you have to jump through. Yes, the gameplay's quick. If you want a easy, simple, real-time dice game, then this might appeal to you. If you love the pandemic universe, this might appeal to you. I would advise that you have a rule where everyone has to stay silent when it's not their go and let everyone else make their own decision, kind of a la Magic Maze. That might be better. Certainly, when I've played, it's just been a mess because, as I've said already, I feel like I'm repeating myself like the game does. You're trying to the things you need to do are ultimately obvious. In Fuse, there was decisions to make. In Flatline, there was decisions to make. In this deck of cards, Paris is always going to need the same things. So there's no sense of, ooh, Paris has got something else. There's no sense of, I prefer like some different way of choosing a city. Then you draw a random card which might have something different on, even that they need to be dropped in a certain order, or you can only do one at a time. You have to keep flying past something to add a bit of challenge, a bit of nuance, and a bit of fun to Pandemic Rapid Response. I'm really sad that I feel this way about this game. But if I want to play a real-time dice game, I will just go to Fuse because it gives me decisions. I feel, as ridiculous as it sounds, I feel like I'm defusing a bomb. The countdown timer on the app is giving me sweats. There's nothing like that in this game. So what? The sun runs out. Ooh, Paris hasn't got its 4 crates that it needed. Oh no. So, intimidation factor. The intimidation factor is low, it's easy to play. More than half the stuff you will do is essentially the same. Rulebook, not great either. One place in the rulebook tells you that when you make something, if it's got other people's dice on it, you give them back to them. And then later on the rulebook says, oh, but before you do that, you roll the dice and check for waste. That's 2 different instructions. Yes, they're on the same page, but they're in different sections, and I was just like, hang on, earlier it said I'd give them back to them. Can they roll them again? Can I roll mine ones again if it's my turn? What does putting them on the card mean? Yeah, not a fantastic rulebook either. Fun. I mean, for me, no. Would I play it again? You know what, if it was out and somebody wanted me to teach it and wanted me to play it with them, I would play it again. It's easy to teach once you understand the rules. It's not going to last that long. I would play it again. Would I recommend it? to people who haven't played real-time games and who really like Pandemic and don't mind shouting out on other people's turns, yeah. But if you're not that person, I would probably say go get Fuse, go get Flatline, just for the sake of immersion and theme. So yeah. Will it be... No, I won't be keeping it. I have Fuse, which is in a smaller box and does more with simpler components. So that has been Pandemic Rapid Response. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you again soon.